Hey, welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Mike Brodinski, and sharing that split screen with me is a top vote getter in the recent election, re-elected to the Wallingford Town Council, Republican Christina Tatta. Christina, welcome back to the show and congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, you had some real big numbers. I want to flash them up on the screen real quick, and we'll come back to the council race in a minute. But you're on top of the pile, and you can see from the screen there a very impressive 8,547 votes. You left the crowd in the dust. Again, congratulations.
Thank you.
But enough of that. Enough of that. There's work to do ahead.
Yes.
You got your, job cut out for you with the new mayor and everything. And I want to talk to you primarily about the future path of the Wallingford Town Council. You were mentioned in the newspaper as maybe being interested in a leadership position on that Wallingford Town Council. Tell me what's going on.
Sure. When the Record Journal asked me, I was just kind of considering something, and then since then, Joe Marrone and I have spoken. Joe is interested in becoming the chairman. I am interested in becoming the vice chairman. We're kind of looking at it as a team deal. So Joe and I work really well together, and we've been talking to some of the counselors. That's what we put out there, and that's where we stand right now.
Okay, so I know you can't speak for Joe Marrone. He's been a guest on the show many times. I know you can't speak for him, at least on this show. But do you have any idea as to why Joe wants to be chair of the town council? Why do you want to be vice chair? What are you two trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I think where Joe and I really agree is that we would like to see the council kind of get a little bit more of its power back. And so over the past years, um, the administration, the administrative branch and the legislative branch, so the mayor and the town council, they've been very kind of in lockstep with each other. So a lot of times the mayor's office kind of dictates what the council should be doing. And we'll push back on that, as you've all seen. Joe and I have done that. But we're hoping with a new mayor and a new council that we can change that and maybe keep the two branches separate. Have a little bit more of a difference of opinion if that happens, where we discuss things and we compromise, and that's kind of where we would like to see it go.
Well, wait a minute now. What do you think Mayor-elect Cerrone thinks about all this? I mean, he's used to the Dickinsonian era, and in the past, many have accused Mayor Dickinson of being imperious, sort of royalty up there, calls the shots and everything else. And Vinnie Cerrone may have been expecting to inherit that system. Along comes Christina Tatta, Joe Marrone, and says, no, wait a minute, things are going to change. So how do you read that? And also, Tom Laffin has been the vice chair. He's done a good job. He's an expert on procedure, Robert's rules, sort of a cool cookie back there, managing the meetings. Just walk me through the reaction that you think that you and Joe Marrone are going to get.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be. I don't think we'll be shoo-ins. I think we have to, really plead our case. As far as Mayor-elect Cerrone, I haven't discussed this with him yet. I mean, Joe Marrone and I both, we want Mayor Cerrone to succeed. I think we all want that. We're excited for him. We're hopeful for this new term. So we're not looking to be a roadblock. We just want the council to maybe have a little bit more say than maybe it's had. And as far as Vice Chair Laffin, I think that's probably the most difficult part of this decision for me. Just personally, it's very hard to see someone who was, very loyal vice chair for years, does a very good job like you said, is an expert on procedure and Robert's rules, and I do think he would be a great chairman. I just think that the council is going to need to decide the direction that it wants to go, and I think that with Vice Chair Lappin, it's maybe a bit more of the way it used to be. He's very close with Mayor-elect Cervoni, and I think Joe and I, it's just a difference. I think it's just a different philosophy where we are going to try to be a little bit more independent of the administration. And yeah, so I think the council, we're just gonna have to make that argument and see which direction the council wants to go in, and whatever they decide, that's how it'll be.
Yeah, I want to, if we can, get a little more specific, and I'll just tell you what I see. And I'm not saying anyone should agree with it, but one of the powers that the chairperson has is to, well, in conjunction with the mayor, maybe as part of a compromise, to set the agenda. But the chairman in the past has always backed off in favor of the mayor. But the agenda setting is something that the chairman can weigh in on: what goes on the agenda, what doesn't, in what order. I remember when I was on the town council, back in the Stone Age, if I wanted something on the agenda and I had a good point, they would always put my item last after everyone went home and went to bed. I'd never get top billing on my items. That's one thing. I remember at one time, Mayor Dickinson and I went head to head, and I said, "This isn't ready for the agenda." I said that. He says, "Well, I'm putting it on anyway." And I said, "No, you're not." And he said, "Well, I'll hold an administrative meeting and we'll do it anyway." And it was never resolved. I'm throwing that out at you as problems maybe you intend to solve. I don't know. Your reaction to what I just said.
Well, we would certainly hope so, and that's one of the things that Councilor Marrone and I have talked about, is that the agenda topic. I think now that the mayor, the way it's been since I've been on the council, the mayor has a huge say in the council agenda, to the point where at times I've said, I don't feel like this is our agenda. I feel like this is a mayoral meeting, and we get invited. And so we would like to hopefully change that a bit.
Let me give you another example that I'm thinking back as you talk, things that were sort of a burr under, my saddle when I was on the council. Sometimes, not a lot, but once in a while, a big issue would come up, very controversial. And on the night of the meeting, the administration would dump on us like a 50-page document that we wouldn't get beforehand, but should have gotten beforehand. And clearly it was a way of manipulating the result. Absolutely no doubt about it. And the excuse always was, well, we didn't give it to you earlier because it was a preliminary draft. Yeah. Anyway, so let me just challenge you on that. I mean, might that still go on under a Joe Marrone, Christina Tatta council-led, agenda?
I don't know. I don't foresee that happening. That actually hasn't happened that often since I've been on the council. I think I remember one time it happened and it was kind of a big deal. But no, that's one of the things that Councilor Marrone and I are huge on, is transparency. And I don't think either of us would go for something like that happening. And I think if that were to happen, we would probably try to table that agenda item until everyone had a chance to review everything thoroughly.
The other general topic is how the budget workshops are managed. I've kind of remember in the past, one or more counselors expressing some dissatisfaction as to how the budget workshops and the budget process was managed. I just wonder, do you think there's a chance that might change, and do you have an idea what it might morph into?
Yeah, Councilor Marrone is usually the biggest critic of the budget workshops and how they work. A lot of the counselors don't, or I shouldn't say a lot, some of the counselors don't attend them at all. And so we did discuss that. I think we probably will want to look at maybe changing that, but we'd want to discuss that with the whole council. And we'll see what everybody thinks. Another one that's similar to that would be ordinance committee. So I've been very frustrated with the ordinance committee lately, because very few counselors go. I think our last two, possibly, there were only 3 of us there. And so you spend, an hour or so at ordinance committee planning out all these details and getting legal language done. And then you get to the council meeting and you just rehash the entire discussion because 6 people weren't at the ordinance committee meeting. So I think another thing we need to look at is the ordinance committee and what we want to do with that.
In the past, you have been a leader in attempting to tamp down mill rate increases proposed by the Dickinson administration. And you and the mayor didn't always see eye to eye. Things got worked out. Sometime once I think there was a veto and an override. I mean, they were, there have been issues. And so now you have Mayor Cervoni proposing his first budget, coming up, within 3 months after he takes office. Do you assume the same mill rate hawk that you have in the past, or do you give Mayor Cervoni a bit of a honeymoon? There's a lot that he wants to get done, a lot you guys want to get done, and you take the position, well, he needs a little extra latitude, a little extra money to do it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it'll be the same. My thoughts are the same as they always have been. I think if it's justified, then I'm all for it, and I'm hopeful that the new Mayor Cervoni, he knows how the budgets work. I'm hopeful that it'll be a responsible budget. We know there's things that we need to spend on, and as long as it's justified, I'm not. Yes, all 4 of my budgets so far, I have made proposals to lower the mill rate. Some of them passed, some did not. But it was always because I didn't feel that the increase was justified with that specific budget. If Mayor Cervoni present the budget and a tax increase is justified, and I think we're saving everywhere we can, then I would go for it. I'm not going to fight a tax increase just for the sake of fighting a tax increase.
So do I detect a statement from you that you're going to give Mayor Cervoni a bit of a honeymoon period? 2, 3, 4, 5 months. He's got to get his feet under him. He's got to get his administration organized, cut him a little slack. Do I detect that? I'm not saying anything is wrong with that. Believe you me, I'm not saying that at all. But I kind of want to know, for the viewers and the voters, what should they expect?
I think you know me a little better than that. I don't think I'm going to let anyone off the hook too easily. But I guess I'm looking at it with optimism and hope. So I want to give Mayor Cervoni every chance I can to see what he's going to do, and I'm hopeful that it's going to be great, and it's going to be what we've all wanted. And if it is, then wonderful. But if it's not, I won't be afraid to question it either.
Let me change the subject on you, and maybe get a little philosophical, and then we'll get into some details with respect to the campaign. But as you look back, because you've gone through a couple terms now, and you have a little sort of a longer range view, do you believe that either party has distinguished itself, either party on the council, I'm just talking local government now, either party on the council has distinguished itself from the other party, so that the Republicans kind of have a brand or a label, and the Democrats kind of have a brand or a label. And the Democrats can say, well, they're the loyal opposition and always will be, because there's a different philosophy about government. And the Republicans have always been dominant on the town council, and they can say, well, we know what our brand is, here it is, and we're sticking to it. Or have votes on the council been so either bipartisan, nonpartisan, mix and match, no pattern to them at all, so that neither party can claim a separate identity? Your thoughts on what I just said?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think locally, we don't tend to vote party line very often. I think when you get to state level and national level, that's when more of the philosophical arguments, ideologies come out. If I had to identify the current Republicans, or at least the past 4 years, I would say our identity is probably individualism, because you see that we all I don't think any of the 6 of us is afraid to stand up for what we think. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. So I think that's our identity, is kind of that we all have a separate identity. It was interesting. One topic that came up recently where I did see ideology come through, and I took note of it because it doesn't happen a lot, was the Fair Rent Commission. There was one point during the discussion where I was explaining why I was opposed to it, and one of my reasons was I started talking about the free market and not letting government interfere with the free market, and then Councillor Carmody had a counterpoint, and he was talking more about protecting renters and holding landlords accountable. And that argument was, you could really see, I think, the party lines there, where it was very kind of Republican ideals from me and Democrat ideals from him, but it stood out to me because it doesn't happen very often.
Right.
So that was a kind of a one-off. But it tends to be, I think, each topic, each issue we just look at, and I think for the most part we vote on the issues. And
yeah, I bet if Mayor-elect Cerrone was in on this conversation, he would probably, no, maybe not, but I'm going to back off a little bit on that. But maybe he would say something like, yeah, I know these Republicans on the council, and it's like herding cats with those guys. You just don't know where they're going to go. And usually that's the criticism of Democrats. You can't get them on board for any one thing, and it's like herding cats there. So I do look forward to the chaos. I want to switch over to some issues pertaining to the campaign. And to set the table for that, I want to put back up on the screen the council results. They're up there now. And we see, you're way ahead. And there's some councilors who won the election, and their vote totals begin with a 7,000 plus. And there's some councilors who won the election and candidates who lost the election, and their vote totals begin with a 6,000 plus. Your thoughts on explaining this chart we have up there? Is it a matter of name recognition, money, energy, party label, a mix? What do you think?
Yeah, it's, I try to think about this every year, because I look at the election as kind of a report card on how I did. So I try to figure out, why my numbers are what they are. And it's hard to tell. You never really know. I mean, as far as campaigns go, so I typically raise, fairly large amount for a council race, as does Councillor Carmody. I think we were probably the two highest fundraisers, and that didn't seem to make too much of a difference in where the two of us fell. And now Councillor Testa, I don't think he raises money. He doesn't really put out too many signs, and he was in second place. So I don't know that there's a correlation there. I think name recognition certainly helps. Obviously being an incumbent helps. I don't know. You never quite know what works and what didn't. I know for me, I run a pretty, I work really hard at my campaign. I worked very hard. I try to get my name out there as much as I can. Some people rely just on doing doors. I know Councillor Fishbein was very heavy on door knocking. I'm not. It's not something I typically, focus on. So everyone has a different strategy, and it's just hard to tell what works and what doesn't.
What's said in the public or the press is when an issue comes up, well, that's what elections are for. That's what elections are for. And on the local level, I'm not sure that is true. I'm not sure that holds. Let me run a couple of issues by you and see if you think the election or the voters, the majority of the voters, told you anything, whether the vote totals sent you a message, or are we trying to just read too much into this? And one of the issues that came up was community pool. As I remember your comments, you've been not in favor of the $7, $8, $9 million proposal, and if it goes out to bid, it comes back even to be more than that. You have not been warm to that. The Democrats have been much warmer towards community pool. So now we had an election. What does that say about the future of community pool, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think what'll happen is it's going probably go out to bid, I would assume fairly early on. That's up to Mayor Cervoni. And then I think the cost will be the deciding factor, honestly. It's
But I guess what I'm getting at, would you agree with me if I said the election didn't solve that? The election didn't
Yeah.
send you guys a message as to where the voters are on community pool.
No, not for that topic. I don't think so.
Another issue that was raised by the Democrat, well, by both sides, was the issue of taxes. Republicans have always said you're fortunate to be in Wallingford because the mill rate is lower than surrounding towns, and the Democrats have always said voters and taxpayers are overtaxed and the fund balance is too high. Did this election solve that debate? Did it send a message on that issue?
I don't know. I mean, I'd like to think maybe for me personally, where my numbers were, maybe it does, because I'm always kind of, I ask a lot of questions at budget time, and I'm kind of hard on the budget, and I've made those motions to lower the mill rate. So maybe people like that and voted for me because of that. But I don't know if I'm reading into it. I don't know.
Yeah. And the last one I'm going to throw at you is the one high school versus two high schools controversy. There's been some thinking that maybe what drove the turnout, the higher turnout, not only because there's going to be a new mayor, which one is it going to be, Riley O'Connell or Vinnie Cervoni, but also this high school issue got people interested. But did the vote totals send you a message as to where the public is on that topic?
That's the one I think was probably the biggest. But then again, you look at Board of Ed, and Sandy Stork, who was very opposed to the one high school, she didn't make it. So, but Melanie Versace did. I believe Caroline Reynes is kind of softly opposed to the one high school, and she made it on as a newcomer. I would say that's the issue I heard the most about, for sure.
I want to put up at this point in our conversation the results of the Board of Education. And we didn't talk about that on the Citizen Mike show before now. And we see on that vote that on that tally board that I have up on the screen, the Republicans did well, taking the first three spots. Longtime incumbent Mike Votto, the leading Democrat newcomer. Congratulations to Melanie Rosacci, as you pointed out, very strong for two high schools. Mm-hmm. And so the top nine, and congratulations to everyone who won, and even congratulations to those who won and did not win. It's a big effort. It's a big effort to run and risk losing. I'm going to take that off the screen, but this high school issue is still hanging. I think we can probably agree the vote totals didn't send much of a clear message, and it's going to have to be narrowed down. And so I've been fighting against a stalemate on this show, and that's where I think we're headed. And I'm beginning to think both sides of the argument maybe would prefer a stalemate than rather ending up with a position they don't like. Everyone has said it's going to be up to the council. It's going to be up to the council. And the council is going to say it's up to the board. It's up to the Board of Ed. And the Board of Ed is going to say, we did our study. It's up to the, I don't know. We're going around chasing our tail. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because we've beaten it up on the Citizen Mike show. But now the vote totals are in. You're talking about maybe Joe Marrone and you being chair and vice chair. Vinnie Cervoni's a new mayor. Do we unlock this impasse somehow? If so, how? Or what do you think?
Well, if you recall, when the Board of Ed came to the council with the presentation for the one high school, I made a motion at one point during that meeting that we just not talk about it anymore, because there was no ask. They weren't asking for money. I wasn't sure why we had brought all these people here, and there were still so many questions. I mean, from what I'm hearing from the voters, I don't think the town wants the one high school. That's the feeling that I'm getting. I don't think there's enough support behind it. I don't think there's a good enough location. So I think we need, again, this is me as a counselor. The Board of Ed obviously needs to make that decision and bring a recommendation, but I I just can't see spending more money to keep prolonging this with what I'm hearing from the constituents. I just don't think enough people want it. And I think we need to maybe just go back. I mean, when I first came on the council, the big thing was the middle schools. That was the big thing. The middle schools are horrible. We need to fix the middle schools. Somehow it turned into we have to look at all the schools, and then it went to this one high school. But we have to do something. I mean, the schools are getting I think everybody knows the schools need work, and so I don't know what the answer is. I think what some people are hoping happens, and this is very possible, is that the Board of Ed will come to the town council to ask for money. The town council will vote, and then that would trigger a referendum if the people so chose to go that route. That's where I think it's going to go, and I think that's what would be the definitive answer.
Okay.
Either put it to bed or keep it going.
I want to change topics completely, but we're still on sort of the campaign of 2023. And for the first time that I can remember, a PAC, a Political Action Committee, PAC, a PAC emerged with some visibility to try to obviously influence the result. And that PAC was called Democrats for Cervoni. Seriously? I mean, really, Christina, Democrats for Cervoni? Really? I mean, straight face? No, I mean, come on. So what's your assessment of that issue? And after you're done, I'll weigh in too.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there were some very strong Cervoni supporters who were Democrats, and they created a PAC and they raised a lot of money, and they put out some advertising, and I guess my general feeling is good for them. I mean, they had a strong opinion and they took action. And I think my concern with the PACs in general is if there is a PAC that's saying something that the candidate, and I'm not saying this happened with the Democrats for Cervoni PAC at all, just in general, if a PAC is created and is putting out negative advertising or making false claims, as a candidate, people might not realize that it's not the candidate saying that. I mean, you have to put on there, paid for by, and it would say that the PAC. But if people don't realize that, it could put a very negative tone to your campaign, and it really has nothing to do with the candidate. And again, I'm not saying that's what happened here, but PACs in general, that would be my fear as a candidate if a PAC were behind me doing things like that.
I have two reactions to what you said. I haven't looked at all of the financial filings, the campaign compliance filings of that PAC. But at the time that I did look at it, there weren't any Democrats involved. It was maybe it was Republicans primarily. I think I'm going to use that word primarily. It was Republicans that labeled their their spending of funds Democrats for Cervoni. And I think most people understood what was going on. It was not that. It was something not that. But you can label a PAC probably any label you want and still be.
And I honestly, I don't know who.
Yeah. Okay.
I know a couple of people who were involved, but I don't know anything about affiliations or anything, so I can't comment on that. But
and the second observation I have is I don't think Wallingford is ready for a PAC. I don't think they want a PAC, that especially one that engages in sort of attack type campaigning. I mean, let the candidates raise the money, get the maximum, and go out there and campaign as hard as you can. But the tradition of a PAC, I hope, never gets rooted in Wallingford. I just didn't like it. I understand the circumstances of this particular PAC and why it happened. Cervoni was attacked and accused of taking a bribe. And so the response to that is, we're going to fight back, and we're going to fight back, and we're going to fight back with a PAC. If someone wants to take off the glove and play hardball with that kind of an accusation, a PAC will be formed and try to level the playing field. I mean, I kind of get the theory. I just don't like the scene. Your thoughts on what I said?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I think the PAC was formed before that.
Okay.
That happened. Maybe that ramped it up a bit after that happened. But
well, I would go with what you say there.
Yeah, again, I'm not 100% sure, but I think so. I mean, I hate to tell people they can't be involved. Like if somebody wants to start a PAC and it's a legal thing to do, then great. I mean, that's their right to do so. I just fear people not realizing, who is speaking for the candidate. So that's my fear with the PACs getting involved.
The issue of negative campaigning and involves what is negative campaigning, and it's kind of like pornography. You can't define it, but you know it when you see it, kind of a thing. And so,
interesting analogy.
But there is everyone has their own personal line, like, oh, that went too far, but there is a legitimate place in campaigning for compare and contrast, examining someone's record, and you're not obligated to do it in a flattering light. But am I right in saying this election was overwhelmed at the end, the last 4 to 6 weeks, with negative campaigning? And am I right? Two questions here I want you to address. Am I right in believing that voters don't like it?
Yeah, absolutely. To the second one, I might go so far as to say that might have cost Riley's campaign the win. People were very, very upset. The last few weeks going around, campaigning and talking to people, I mean, the sentiment was just not in Wallingford. We don't do this in Wallingford. People were very upset about it. I talked to Vinnie Cervoni when one of the things first came out, and I never saw Vinnie as upset as I did that day. He was hurt by this. And whether you agree with Vinnie's stances or not, he's a good person. He's a really good person, a lot of integrity, and it affected him, and it was hard to see that. And I think people just didn't like it. I don't think it worked well. I think if you want to talk about the issues and debate the issues, that's fine. And I know, as an elected official, certainly I get questioned and I have to defend my, why I voted on something. But you do it respectfully, and to have those personal attacks, it's not Wallingford, and people just did not take well to it.
The election totals may obviously reflect the sentiment of the voters in Wallingford, and I'm trying to synopsize in like 1 or 2 sentences what that sentiment was. And one answer could be, I'm not saying I agree with it, is that voters were not ready to reject Dickinsonism, that whatever was in Dickinsonism they wanted to hold on to, but they were probably relieved that Mayor Dickinson, who, thank you for your service, you put in a ton of time all through your life, and this really was, Wallingford was his life. This is not an attack on him personally, and he deserves more recognition than he's gotten so far. I think that'll come, but it hasn't happened when we produce this show. But the voters were not ready to reject Dickinsonism. They were ready for another face, but another face that would carry on with some tweaks what they were used to. Am I missing the mark? Is there another point to make to try and interpret why the voters decided the way they did?
I agree with you. I think in general, and it's kind of how I feel personally too. Mayor Dickinson did a great job for 4 decades, and we're a very stable town. Taxes, services, everything's good, but there are things that we want addressed and we want changed, and I think that's what the voters said too. But to completely reject all of the good that we have, I think people in Wallingford are generally happy. There's certainly things we need to work on, but in general, we're happy. And so to completely reject all that and go with somebody totally new, I don't think that's what happened. I mean, the Republicans retained control of the council, mayor and board of ed. So I think in general, people are happy, but we certainly need to listen to the concerns and work on those. And I think that's, to go back to what we were talking about in the beginning, just changing the council leadership. Same thing, we want Mayor Cervoni to be successful, and we're behind him 100%. But we also want a little bit of a change in the way operationally things have gone.
There's another narrative. It doesn't contradict this first narrative that you and I have been talking about, but there's another narrative, and that is, if you're running in Wallingford in a local election, it really, really, really helps to be a Republican.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really hard as a Democrat to break through on a local election. And it has, not in a local election, but Democrats have succeeded in Wallingford. I just went back to the election of 2022. That's a state election. That was a state election. So Democrat Lamont barely over Stefanowski, the Republican. Blumenthal easily over Leora Levy. Democrat DeLauro pretty easily over Donardis. Democrat Mashinsky over Lentz. And Democrat Tong for Attorney General, state level, over Cordes. So it is possible on state and maybe national elections to break through, but not as a Republican, not as a Democrat on the local election. What impact does the party label have, do you think, on the vote totals?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I believe there are more registered Democrats in town than Republicans, and yet, the Republicans tend to we do much better in the local elections, and I think you get some. You kind of ride on the coattails a little bit. If people are happy with the mayor in general, you get some of that. I don't know that the message of the DTC is translating to what people in Wallingford want, and I'm sure they're looking at that right now after this election, and what are they, what is their message, and what are they getting across? And I back to the campaigning too. So the difference between the RTC and the DTC, they tend to campaign more as a group. I know last year, like, they ran as a slate, they had all the names on the signs. We all do our own thing. Now it seems to be working. So I run my campaign. The RTC, they're there to help me if I need help, but I do my own thing. Everybody does their own thing. And I think maybe that makes us a little bit stronger with our vote totals, that we run our own campaigns. And but yeah, it's the Republicans I think it's just people are generally happy, and so they just keep reelecting us.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of occasions in the past, and I don't want to relitigate this and we run out of time anyway, that maybe some candidates started out as Democrats, weren't all that successful, and switched over to Republicans and became more successful.
Yeah.
And just a very interesting phenomenon. It's not common, but it's not unheard of either.
And that could change at any moment. I mean, we saw that, I believe, in Cheshire, just with their local elections recently. They flipped from Republican to Democrat. I believe it just happened in South Windsor with this election. So, I don't take it for granted. I know it could be fleeting, and you never know what's going to happen the next election.
Let's call it quits. We covered a lot of ground. Good luck to you on the council. It's going to be new. It's going to be a new challenge. It's not business as usual for you as a counselor, whatever role you end up as. Thanks for coming back on the Citizen Mike Show, and I hope to see you again in the near future. Before we leave, though, I want to thank our viewers for watching the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for watching WPAA TV, which also broadcasts the show. And again, thanks, Christina. See you next time.